Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 72 of the Stephen King podcast. And this is a special podcast for Hans and I because, Hans, this is our 5th anniversary.
Oh, that's amazing. 5
Isn't
years.
it scary how quickly time
scary.
flies?
Yeah.
It is. Man, oh man. So what can I say? It's been a blast, and I thank you again for taking me up on the offer. And I think it's been a good voyage for both of us. At least I hope so.
Definitely, and I want to thank you for doing all the hard technical stuff. I just let my mouth run and you do all the cleaning up. So,
and you're such a good English speaker now too, right? So
yeah, it's good for me to exercise my English, definitely.
Okay. So, folks, yeah, it's 5 years, and the way things are going this year, it could be another 5 years easy. So we'll have to see, but don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but we'll definitely plan to do that. And with this episode, we've got a ton of news, and we have a special interview that Hans did with the book author of the upcoming behind the scenes Cujo book. I think it's called Nothing's Wrong Here.
Yeah, nope, Nothing's Wrong Here. The Making of Cujo.
By Lee Gambin, right?
Yep.
All right. So let's get into the news. Welcome. Do not fear the door that lies before you. We will protect you. We are your guides, Hans and Lou, and we will give you the latest in Stephen King news. But before we do so, you must prove yourself worthy. You must open the door and join us in the DeathRoom.
Yes, and first up is a new conquer dance by none other than Robin Firth, who you might probably know from a lot of Dark Tower stuff. She did the conquer dance for the Dark Tower books. She's been involved with the Dark Tower comics, and she's also been a consultant on the new Dark Tower movie. So she definitely knows her Stephen King and her Dark Tower, but what she's done now is something similar with the Bill Hodges character and his journey through Mr. Mercedes, Finders Keepers, and The Watch. And this one was actually it was possible to download this for free from Stephen King's site. I think the free period has ended now, so now you have to buy it online if you want to read it. But it's a good complement to the books, and it might not be something you read from cover to cover, but it's definitely something that you can use to look into the different characters and places and stuff and things like that. So it's a good complement to the books, I think. A lot of hard work put into these conquer dances. I mean, if you've looked through the Dark Tower conquer dance, you know what I mean. It's not an easy task to get all that stuff down.
No, it definitely takes a special kind of skill set, and I've downloaded it, and there was a contest running at the same time. I think it was limited to residents of the United States, unfortunately. So
yeah. Hopefully
you guys saw that, because this podcast is probably coming out after that ended. But hopefully if you do win, let us know. There's some pretty cool stuff up there, and it's kind of neat to see that this behind the scenes stuff is happening for a lot of King's works, not just for the more obvious stuff like the Dark Tower universe. So that's pretty cool.
Yep.
Up next, we have interesting what-if scenario or behind-the-scenes look at The Shining. And the article that is up at Hans' site is about Danny Torrance could have died in The Shining. And there's an Entertainment Weekly article where they spoke to Diane Johnson and Jan Harlan about their work on Kubrick's Shining. And there's quite a bit of interesting stuff there. Interestingly enough, I guess because of Kubrick's history with blowing up things like in Dr. Strangelove and that, he didn't want to blow up the hotel, which I think is one of Stephen King's comparison points where he says the book is hot and Kubrick's movie is cool. So that's a reason why he didn't blow up the hotel. Also talks about the fact that nobody gets killed in the book except for Jack, which in a horror movie is quite unusual. Though you could argue that there's a lot of ghosts that already were killed prior to their arrival there, and we get to see them as well. So
Yeah.
but he tried to mix things up. At one point, even Danny was briefly considered to die, which I think I'm so glad they didn't do, because it's even though they've changed the focus of the book from Danny to his father, I still think that would have been pretty bad. It would have been like a Cujo ending, so the book ending. So you probably would have liked that, though, right, Hans?
Yeah, I think I might. Yeah, but I think this kind of stuff is really intriguing my imagination, and I love to hear about what could have been and stuff like that. So this is an interesting article, and it's interesting to hear from the people who were involved with the movie when it was made, and how the discussions went, and they wanted to do that and they didn't want to do that, and they rejected that and stuff like that. And personally, I think that is really interesting reading, and what if is very interesting. So even though The Shining isn't one of my favorite movies, I really enjoyed reading all about this stuff. And I know we talked about last time, I think it was, we talked about The Running Man, who is really not a good movie, but that was also interesting to read that article about how they wanted to do and what changes and what plans they had and stuff like that. So this is really, really something I enjoy.
Yeah, and it also lends insight as to why Jack Halloran was killed, because Kubrick just felt like he had to kill somebody in the horror movie. Yep. But I think it's probably my least favorite element of the story, to have that poor guy drive all the way out there just to end up as cannon fodder. So
yeah,
but now we know where that came from.
Yep. Next up is a new book actually from Cemetery Dance called Reading Stephen King. And this is, as the title might give away, not a book by Stephen King, but a book filled with essays and stories from fans who have read Stephen King. And there's a lot of people involved here. I have a piece in here as well called Being a Non-US Stephen King Fan. And there's stuff from Tony Magistrale and Michael Collins, Rocky Wood, Robin Firth, Stuart Onan, Frank Darabont. A lot of people have written stuff in here about reading Stephen King and what that meant to them. So this is quite an interesting book, I think. I haven't read any of the other stuff, and mine was written quite some time ago, so this book has been in the making for a long time. So I think this will be an interesting book to read.
Yeah, it's always interesting to read other people's opinions about Stephen King, because even though we do share a lot of experiences, it's the differences I always find very interesting between various people's reactions to Stephen King. And hopefully, again, this is one of those things for us non-US residents that hopefully it will become available through alternative online means, just besides Cemetery Dance, because of shipping costs. Maybe it'll end up on Amazon or an ebook.
Yeah.
I definitely would like to read it. So, and like as you said, there's a good list of people to read the various viewpoints on Stephen King about. So I think it would definitely be worth reading. And much like the other one, the one about King's college years, which I still haven't had a chance to read. I find these kind of books interesting to read for sure.
Yep, definitely. And it will be out this fall if everything goes as planned.
All right, turning to the TV arena. No, this is not more updates on projects that we've already talked about. This is actually another Stephen King TV adaptation to something that we haven't even read yet. So like they're really 2017. I still can't wrap my head around. We talked about last year what are we going to talk about with King? We were kind of hoping for 2 books, and we had the 2 movies, but it's just blown up beyond that. So we find out now that Sleeping Beauties, that he co-wrote with his son Owen King, is going to be done as a TV series as well. And obviously, since we haven't read the book, we have no way of judging if this is the best arena for adapting this work, but sounds like there's some people with some good credentials behind it. Michael Sugar, Oscar-winning producer, will executive produce the series, and I thought this was going to be on Hulu, but I'm not sure about that.
No, I don't think this one has a station yet.
A distributor yet? No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you see the same thing happen with The Talisman, that it was sold as a movie even before it was released. And it's interesting to hear. I wonder how the people who buy the rights if they just buy it because it's a Stephen King story, or if they have some insight and get to read the book before everyone else. And I mean, there hasn't even been these early review copies hasn't even been done of it yet, as far as I know. So it's interesting how these things works. Do they buy it unseen and hope that it's good, or I don't know.
I think with Stephen King's track record, there's not many things that you could call a surer bet than bidding on some property from him. I mean, that's pretty well money in the bank. So I think they're pretty confident about that. I just want to add that the Michael Sugar, he's also done a Netflix series called The OA, which you can currently watch on Netflix, and that's been renewed for a new season. As well as he's got the upcoming series Maniac, starring Emma Stone and Jonah Hill, with former It writer and director Cary Fukunaga directing. So that's interesting. So based on that profile, I would think that this is a series that will end up on Netflix as well. I mean, that's not guaranteed, but considering where his most recent work has ended up on Netflix, it's a safe bet to think that it will end up there as well. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, and this often happens as well, that stuff are bought but it never goes anywhere. So this doesn't mean that it will be done for next year or something like that. It could be, but it could also drag out and be nothing happens from it. Look at the Talisman. It's been sold since early 80s and still nothing happens. So we don't know. Hopefully something will happen.
I feel pretty comfortable saying that we'll see this before we'll see Talisman.
Probably. Yep. Next thing is actually also a movie, and this is a short movie, and from what I can tell, it's probably a Dollar Baby version. Those Dollar Babies happens everywhere now, and it's not like in the beginning that it was isolated movies being sold. They are all over the place now, and of course the quality of them are also all over the place, from really, really bad to really, really good. But what stands out on this one is, and it's a version of My Pretty Pony, is that Tobin Bell is set to star in it. And for those of you who might not recognize that name, he is the main villain in the Saw movies. So this is a pretty big actor for being in a Dollar Baby. So that makes this one a little more interesting than the others, I would say.
And it's not just who's in front of the camera, but it's also who's behind the camera. So this is where I'm getting kind of confused. Because it's Josh Boone is executive producing this as well. So yes, that's kind of surprising. If this is a Dollar Baby, maybe there's going to be some extra money behind the scenes. Maybe they're just, I don't know what the relationship between all these people is, but there might be some, maybe they're just trying to help out this person that is Luke Jaden.
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe they're just trying to help him out, sort of a paying it forward kind of thing. But for a Dollar Baby, this one has a very impressive resume for sure.
Definitely, yeah. So hopefully we'll see that, or as the case often is with those Dollar Babies, that they are often very hard to find and hard to see, and because the deal is that you can't make any money of it, so it's rarely distributed and stuff like that. There are a few, but we probably won't be seeing this one too much if it is a Dollar Baby, in fact.
Okay, so this next one is kind of a tongue-in-cheek, but
yeah,
I can see where the people that are being affected by this are complaining. And it's, if you look at the April 8th entry on Hans' site, it says, "No one sticks up for a clown." And there's an article there from Mel magazine that written by John McDermott, talking about the fact that clowns are upset about the release of this new version of It, because the trailer did such a great job. And like as we said before, that's almost 200 million hits in the first 24 hours. It's basically re-energizing or re-invoking a lot of people's fears of clowns. And it's a weird dynamic because are you afraid of clowns, Han?
I can't say that I am. But I can understand, and we had here in Sweden, I don't know if you had, I think you had it in the US and Canada as well, that people dressed up as clowns and scared people, and I think there even was someone stabbing someone and stuff like that. I think it was about a year ago, and I know a lot of people were scared, and definitely kids were scared to go out late, and there was rumors that there were clowns running around everywhere, so it was definitely a hard time for clowns. And I know here in Sweden, at least in a few places, the McDonald's restaurants even redrew Ronald McDonald for a couple of weeks, I think,
Oh yeah.
just to not scare the kids anymore. So I think it's definitely a hard time to be a clown. But what I think is so funny about this one is actually that one clown says, and I quote him, "No one sticks up for a clown. The only thing cooler to dislike is a mime." And I mean, I'm sorry, I mean all the clowns, but it's very hard to take it seriously when you commenting stuff like that. So I think it's funny.
It is funny, but I can feel for them in a way too, because
Yeah.
I've had developed a bit of an obsession the last couple of weeks. Ever since the It trailer came out, I've been watching trailer reactions to it, and 90% of the people that watch those trailers say, "Oh, I watched it when I was a kid, and ever since then I was afraid of clowns." And so, like 200 million views, that's a lot of people being afraid of clowns, which I don't really get, but I guess, when you're young and impressionable, I guess I was just a bit too old to be in the age group that got nightmares about clowns because, I mean, seeing something in a sewer obviously is any person, whether it's a clown or not, but to kind of link the two is something that's the talent that King has to know those pressure points, whether it's a rabid dog or fear of the dark and stuff like that. And somehow he hit on something with this whole clown thing, which I never would have thought of in a million years.
Yeah, and I think that what's making it so even more scary is that clowns are supposed to be those kinds and funny characters, and now we have an evil clown, so that's the contrasts between them are bigger. But I guess you have to write something about a mime in the next book then, so you can take the pressures off the clowns.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's a fun article to read, though.
Yes.
Yeah, and we won't leave any Dark Tower stuff out this time either. So a new set of figures from the Dark Tower are coming, and we have some photos of them, or there's a picture of them on the site. And I hope that these are early pictures, because Roland looks like someone has placed a can over his head and moved it, so his head is formed as it's been in a can. And
it's like a paint can,
yeah, and I can't imagine that would be the case once it's done.
They should have. Well, he doesn't wear a hat, right? So that's part of the problem.
Yeah. I guess you could place a bottle on the head and let the others train shooting.
Yeah. I guess.
Yeah, but these are the characters that we've seen, or the version of the type of figures that we've seen that looks almost like Lego. And I don't know, I don't think they look that great. The man in black, he looks okay. Jake looks like, I don't know, his body ends in a T and the legs are just stuck there. I don't know, it looks really creepy, I think. And then there's just a figure of a character we don't know. It's black, so we don't know who that is, but that's supposed to be a secret character, and I don't know who that is. The only thing I know is it's not Oi, because it's a human. So I guess we'll see what happens with those, but I can't say that I was tempted to get them from seeing this photo. I don't know about you.
I guess we're just not the right demographic for this kind of stuff.
I guess, yeah.
I think if you're under 40, I think it's just gonna, because when I see videos like of people doing, whatever, a lot of them have all these like pop art boxes, like with all these Marvel characters or Star Wars characters, like their whole walls are filled up with this stuff. So there is definitely a market out there for it, but it's not the market that I'm part of anymore.
No. And I get the feeling of when McDonald's has some drive where they have like a Disney movie and they have those figures from the characters. I get the same feeling about these. These could definitely be placed in a I don't know, fun pack, or what are they called? Big
kids pack.
Kids pack. Yeah. So I don't think they are done with that little extra finesse that you need to have if they're gonna be. I know that there's some Walking Dead figures done by, I don't know what company it is. They look really cool, and they look like the character they're supposed to look like. And
like,
I mean,
sideshow collectibles or something.
Yeah, I think that might be. But these are just, I mean, Jake, you couldn't, if you just look at him, you couldn't even tell that it's him. So I
Well, he
don't.
does have a Dark Tower book in his hand.
Yeah, he does, but I mean, he could easily go as a Stephen King fan then.
Yeah, but the one that just throws me is the character in black, because it's just like how hard was it to make that character?
Yeah, looks like a robot. Robot.
Yeah, like we might change our minds once we see this character in the movie, but
Yeah.
right now it's hard to tell what that's all about.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that robot in book 5.
Andy?
Andy, yeah, exactly. But I don't think he's in the movie, so I don't think it is him. But the shape of it looks like a robot, so I was thinking maybe it would be him. But that wouldn't make much sense since he's probably not in the movie as far as we know. So
Yeah, it has to be maybe Tirana, because that's a character that is mentioned in the cast list, and she's like I don't think a Manny, but one of Flag's followers. So maybe she's some kind of a witch or something like that.
yeah, yeah. I guess we'll see once it's out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So what do we got next? Back to TV.
Yes.
We got the first teaser for The Mist, and it was an interesting take. It has the unfortunate position of being released after the It trailer. So even though I realize one's a movie and the other's a TV show, that It trailer just totally, you just want to get in your car and drive to the nearest theater and see the movie, whereas this is not making me want to mark down the date on my calendar. Hopefully it's going to be more of a slow burn type of show, and we obviously saw that characters are spread out over multiple locations instead of just the supermarket, so that's different as well. I have some other thoughts, but I'd like to hear your general impressions of it first, Hans.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting, and it intrigues me, and it makes me want to see more of it, actually. And I think that after seeing this trailer, it's really clear to me that this is not an adaptation of the story straight off, but more of it takes its starting points in the story, and I expect it to be quite different and more of a haven kind of thing that more goes from the feeling of the story. And that also is very true to what we've heard Chris Thorpe said about it, that it's more like the Fargo thing, that it takes the mythology and the feelings from in that case, the first movie, but here in the story, and then it develops into something of its own. And I think that, I know a lot of people will be upset that it's not a adaptation of the story straight off, but and from the beginning I was also a bit down about that, but I think that since we have the story, we have a great movie version of it. If this was done as an adaptation straight off, it would be almost like the same thing again. So maybe this is a good thing that we get a third version of it, if you like, that hopefully can, because if this is a 10 episode first season, and the plan is to get more season out of it, and to do that you can't just add the story, because that's, I don't know, like 50 pages or something like that, or 100 or whatever it is, and that is not enough to fill a full season, because then I think people would be thinking that, oh, this is dragging out forever and nothing happens. So I think that in order to have it run like its own show, it has to be different, and it has to be having a lot of other stuff, and I think that's why we get a lot more people in a lot more places, so that they can build a wider story. And of course the worry is that it will be something like Under the Dome.
Yeah.
But I think that, I don't know, it could be, but it could also be not be, because in Under the Dome there were so many things that went wrong, from casting to scripting to acting to, I mean, everything was wrong in that one almost. And I think that this could be good, it could be bad, we don't know yet, but I don't think that the fact that it's different from the story should be something that scares you off from it, because I think that that's more like an opportunity to get the third version of the story, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. And I'm not prejudging the show on this, but as a trailer, it doesn't excite me to watch the show, is what I'm what I'm trying to get across. Like, I'm definitely going to be open-minded about where the show goes. And like you said, if they offer up a third alternative, that could be potentially cool. The multiple location idea is the thing that's attracting me more than anything right now. In my mind, I had the novella ending, so I was expecting it to be like a on the road kind of show where they're driving from town to town trying to find a way out of the mist, whereas this seems like they're just going to be staying within this one town, which for a TV show obviously makes sense, but I was hoping for more of a road type of TV show. And they might do that at the end of this season, this first season. It's hard to say. The one thing that I was concerned about, though, was the line that one of the girls said, and maybe it's out of context, but she says that the mist plays with your mind. And I don't want them to make the mist some sort of device that allows for hallucinogenic experiences and things like that. That's one of my worries. That's probably my biggest worry that I got from the trailer, because the mist is just mist. It's what's in the mist, and it's what's inside of us. That's what that story's about.
Yeah.
And using it to be some sort of mind device or whatever, or mind to create nightmares or whatever, or flashbacks. I don't know. That has me a little worried. I think that's straying a little bit too far from the source material, but I can obviously see the potential that could lead for interesting story ideas, as long as they make the rules or make it clear as to what the limits of the mist are very quickly, and not, oh, we need a new story, so now the mist can teleport people from one place to another, or some strange thing like that. Like they got to get some ground rules and stick to them, is what I'm worried about.
Yeah, and that is one of the things that was missing in Under the Dome, because the rules changed all the time there, and the logic didn't really follow. So I agree with you definitely that they need to establish the mist quite fast and what it is, or maybe not what it is, but at least what its rules are. So I agree definitely there. And also this one came just a week after the It trailer, I think, and I think everything that comes after that is having a hard time. But
definitely,
it intrigues me. I still have some worries about it, but I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it, and hopefully it will be a good third version of the story. The next thing is something that I had never heard about earlier till I got an email about it. It's something called the Nocturnal Reader's Box. Have you heard about that before?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We're on parallel paths here, because I was watching some book reviewer on another YouTube channel talking about horror things, and right now you can order these loot crate things, and they're usually themed for horror or fantasy or something, whatever. And then they mentioned this one, which was much more book based, and was called Nocturnal Readers, and they do fairly interesting horror type themes every month. So when you put that up, I had to laugh, because I said I was just going to tell them about this. But what's cool about this next one, as you mentioned, is the upcoming Stephen King connection that they're working on.
Yes, and they are collaborating with Cemetery Dance. So the book that's going to be in there is Gwendy's Button Box, and some other goodies that has to do with Stephen King. The entire book will be the entire box will be Stephen King themed. So, and there will be some cool things in it. I have heard some things that haven't been released yet, so I can't really mention them, but it will definitely be a great thing to get your hands on. And it's not that expensive. It's $35 plus shipping, though, which might be a bit expensive to get it if you're not in the US. But I don't know exactly what Gwendy's Button Box, just a book, cost at Amazon, but I guess it's about $20 or something like that. So you get a lot of stuff in here for those extra dollars. So you should definitely check this out.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look up because I actually pre-ordered it on Amazon, and I think it was in Canada. It was about it's $32 hardcover. So this package is $35 American, plus, like you said, shipping, which will probably almost double the price. But I'm still thinking I'm definitely interested in getting it. The catch is it's a limited quantity venture, so every month they only produce, I think they said 1,500 units.
Yep.
So you have to get on the mailing list, and you're not guaranteed that you're going to get it, because if you respond to it too late, it could all be sold out before you have a chance to put down your money for it. So
yeah, and this one will have an exclusive cover for the Gwendy's Button Box, yes. So for all those collectors out there who want every edition, this is definitely something to look into.
Yeah, but you have to sign up, and they will send out, I guess they'll do a mass emailing on May 1st, and then you'll have to get your money in very quickly. Otherwise, you'll be out of luck. And they've sold out in previous months, and that was for not even Stephen King related stuff. So I'm expecting a lot of book collectors and Stephen book collectors will be jumping on this. So
Yep.
you almost have to set up, I don't know what time they're going to release the email, but when it comes, you better jump.
Yep.
So, if you want it. So, and then our next item is with TV is we have a bunch of Mr. Mercedes related pictures. So if you go to Hans' site, there's pictures of King on set with Kelly Lynch, who's playing Deborah Hartsfield. There's also a picture of Bill Hodges, which I made fun of his beard in your comment section because he doesn't look like Bill Hodges didn't have a beard in the book. I hope I'm right about that. Because I made that up the whole basis of my saying he doesn't look like the part at all. But of course, he looks fantastic. And more than anything, I think it's just like the color of his skin, like that red look. It makes him look like a retired person. So.
Yep.
And he is such a fantastic actor. I'm just pinching myself that they got him to play this part. So that's great. And then the last picture, which I think for a lot of people who were worried about Justin Lupe, sorry, Justine, if I'm pronouncing your last name wrong, is her photo. What do you call that?
Profile photo
or whatever it's called. She's blonde hair, very pretty looking, and here, I mean, it's the angle of her face is not this obviously as full on as the other one, but her hair dyed brunette, and it's not done up and made look too fancy. It looks a little stringy and unkempt. I mean, she looks like a dead ringer for Holly. So
yeah,
it's amazing what a little bit of makeup could do.
Exactly, and this picture is actually not from the set of the movie. This is from a different place that has nothing to do with Mr. Mercedes.
Or she was on a protest march or something.
Yeah, I think they had the Clean Earth Day or something like that. There's a special day to celebrate the clean Earth or something like that. So I think this is something related to that.
Right.
But it's not. If people are thinking, "Wow, what scene is this?" So this is not from the movie. So you don't have to think more about that. Yeah, and I think that the casting for Mr. Mercedes is turning out really good, and I don't remember if he had any beard or not, Bill Hodges, and I really didn't think about that when I read the book either, so I think he's perfect cast for that part. I think he looks like Bill. So I think that will be perfect.
Yeah, no, I was just kidding around. Yeah, I think he looks fantastic as a part, and I'm sure he's going to give a great performance.
Yeah. Okay, and the last news we have today it's just King related actually. It has nothing with Stephen King to do, but it has to do with his son, Joe, and this is about his comic Lock and Key. I don't know if you have read it, but that one is going to be a TV show on Hulu, and they have ordered a 1-hour pilot, and this has actually been filmed before. Fox ordered a pilot episode. I don't remember exactly when it was, but it's a couple of years ago. But that never led anywhere. They did the pilot, which seems to be hidden under, and they seem to have destroyed everything about it because, as far as I know, it hasn't leaked out.
No, I've looked occasionally and I haven't been able to find it either, and I heard it's really good.
Yeah, I would love to have seen that, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to be out there. If anyone knows where, please tell us. But now they are doing another try, and Hulu is giving it a shot, and they are ordering a 1-hour pilot. I don't know why they would just order a pilot though, because I guess they are uncertain if it's good, but it seems like if you believe in something and order 1-hour pilot and then it's good, you have to do it all again. So it's a little bit worrying, I think, that they or that could be the way it works, but usually I think that they order more than a pilot, right? Don't you think?
Yeah, maybe it's just the wording, because Hulu usually orders series. They don't do pilots, so that is weird.
Yeah,
especially a 1-hour pilot like that. If it was a movie pilot, I could kind of see that, especially for Netflix. I've never heard of them doing that before.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see, but hopefully it will be good, and Hulu will order a full season of it and will be as good as the comic. I don't know, have you read the comics?
Yes, and they're fantastic. I would say arguably they're probably the best bit of work that Joe Hill's done, which is saying a lot if you've read any of his other books. But the mythology is of this house key house. And there's a set of keys there that each one of them has a different ability, and some of them open doors. And when you step through that door, you get a certain ability, or you end up in a certain place. There's some really freaky keys. One that basically opens up your head, and then a person can go in and rearrange your memories. It's some pretty bizarre stuff, but it's a family story. So it's got like the house is almost, it's not quite a haunted house, but it's like an old style manor. So it's a very, very cool story. And what's really exciting about this is Carlton Cuse from Lost, who has had some good work after Lost. He's also done Bates Motel and The Strain and The Colony. So he's done quite well. And the director of the pilot is going to be Scott Derrickson, who just did Doctor Strange. So the Doctor Strange movie. So that's, this is exciting stuff. And we don't have any timeline on this. And I'm hoping that if it is just a 1 hour pilot, that it will kick off a series. It would be really frustrating to have 2 pilots that don't go anywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I have read some of the comics. I haven't finished it all. I have a very limited interest span when you get so few pages with such a long intervals between them. My plan was to. I think it's the comic has ended now, right?
Yeah, so you can get collected editions of the stories.
Yeah, so that was my plan, to read it all when it was finished. I tend to lose interest a little bit when you get like 20 pages and then you have to wait a month and get 20 more. So,
yeah.
But from what I read, it was very good, so I have no doubt about that.
And it was really well illustrated too.
Yeah.
I like the Dark Tower comics with Jay Lee. This one was with Gabriel Rodriguez, I believe, is the artist.
Yeah.
Please don't shoot me out there if you don't, if I didn't get the name right. But they were really well drawn as well. So
yeah,
really gorgeous panels, very Victorian Gothic feel to them at times. So, and pretty interesting characters, and the story takes some really interesting twists as well. So it's quite well done.
Yeah. Okay, that is it for the news for this episode.
And then up next is our Hans's interview with
Lee Gambin. Yes, and this is a very interesting interview about a very interesting book. Lee is actually stationed in Australia. So the time zone was, with you I have 7 hours, you are 7 hours behind me, and he was are 7 hours ahead of me. So I called him and we spoke, and I think it was 3 or 4 in the morning for him. It was late at night for me, so but we managed, and we spoke on the phone, and I hope the sound quality works good. It was recorded with my phone.
Okay.
So hopefully it's good. And the book he's written is called Nope, Nothing's Wrong Here, The Making of Cujo. And Nope, Nothing's Wrong Here is definitely from, if you remember, the commercial that Vic Trenton is doing in the movie with the professor and the cereals and everything like that. So that's definitely from that. But it also tells, and the book is structured so that Lee has broken the movie down in sections, and he goes through them with an analysis about them, and then he has interviewed a really high number of people about it. Everything from the sound boom operator to the director to Dee Wallace to everybody who's been in the movie, and they comment on the scene and what happened behind the scenes, and the title could go very well with what happened, because there are some controversials, some fired directors and other stuff like that. So it's really interesting, and we get to hear about the animal trainers and that they used. It's interesting because when you interview people after so long time, their memory are a bit different. So we hear from that they used everything from 3 to 10 different dogs. They used a mechanical dog. They used a dog's head, mechanical. They used a man that they put in a dog suit. And they actually used a black Labrador that they put in a St. Bernard's suit because the St. Bernard can't run as fast as they wanted him to do. So they actually had one dog dressed up as another dog to make the running scenes. And this is really, I love this stuff, as I mentioned earlier. It's like the behind the scenes stuff you can get on a DVD movie, only here it's in written forms. And there's also a lot of very interesting photos included in these books that these people that were involved with the movie took as their personal photos and have them then shared with Lee that he could use in this book. And there's a favorite of mine that can actually be seen on my site where the man in the Cujo suit has removed his head, and together with Dee Wallace and another person who I don't know it is, they have their arms around each other's shoulders and are dancing. So that's a very bizarre picture, but it's on my site. You can check it out.
Cool.
So it's a great book. I read the book. It will be out in July, I think. And it's available for pre-order now. So it's interesting, and Lee talks a lot about behind the scenes and how he wrote this book and how it is to work from Australia, talking to people in the US and everything like that. So I hope you will enjoy this interview that I did.
This is great. What's our job? We'd like drive around, pick up stiffs or what?
It's time for reviews from the Night Shift.
Okay, could you start telling me a little bit about yourself and how you came to write this book?
Sure. I've been writing for a while now, like a long time now, doing mostly film sort of journalism, film criticism writing, film historian work. So I've done that for a long time now. I have published a book on ecological horror films, so films where the featured monster or the featured threat are animals, and that ranges from films like The Birds to Frogs to Grizzly, Orca, The Pack, etc. There's a whole bunch of films covered there, and one of the films I discuss in depth in that book is Cujo, which has always been a favourite. And then also I'm a big fan of dogs in films. I've always sort of been sort of a champion of dogs in movies, regardless if they're horror films or not. But yeah, Cujo sort of has always meant a lot to me as a kid growing up, and it's one of my favourite of the Stephen King adaptations. I think it's one of the strongest, one of the most successful. Everyone really loves films like Carrie and The Shining, and as you should, because they are brilliant films. But I've always sort of, really sort of championed Cujo. I feel it's kind of underrated and underlooked, and it's such a brilliant film and so perfect in its sort of realisation from novel to film adaptation. Obviously there's differences between the two as far as the story goes, but I feel it's a really, really strong film. So I guess working on the book started early last year, and it sort of took off from there, and it was kind of a really smooth ride, to be honest. It was not so daunting or as stressful as what you'd expect a sort of really dense making of book would sort of call for. At the same time, simultaneously, I guess I was sort of wrapping up a book on The Howling for another publisher, which was another similar sort of take on the Cujo book. It was half analytical and half making of, and that's for Centipede Press for their studies in the horror film series, which, has been a massive success. They've done books on Salem's Lot and The Shining and Videodrome and The Exorcist, etc. And I got to do The Howling, which was a thrill. But yeah, the Cujo book was a far smoother ride than The Howling, let's just say that, for just a couple of reasons, really. But yeah, so that's how I started working on it, and it was sort of a work of passion, I guess. But yeah, it was fun to work on, and it just wrapped up recently. So it's in pre-orders now. So it took just over a year to do, and what I've got in the book is a whole bunch of interviews from a whole bunch of people, from Dee Wallace, Danny Pintaro to Louis Teague, and a whole bunch of people involved in the film. I think there's over 30 interviews in the book, and I go sort of really extensive, and I get quite exhaustive. So for instance, sadly, Barbara Turner, who wrote the screenplay, died in April last year, and I missed out on talking to her. So Peter Medak, who was the first assigned director, he was a good friend of hers, suggested I speak to one of her daughters, Mina Baddy, who's the sister of Jennifer Jason Leigh, and then she spoke about her mum. So that was nice to have that kind of stuff in there. So just to go that extra effort, that extra mile, and get as much as you can. Even like Danny Pintaro was really lovely, and he was like, "Oh, you should speak to my mum and dad. They were on set. They probably remember a lot more than me." And Margaret, his mother, was a font of knowledge on the set, and she had a lot to say, and they've contributed a bunch of photos that have never been seen before. So it was a cool experience to work on, and very, very supportive. Every single person involved in Cujo has just been just wonderful, just warm and brilliant, and really, really candid. Yeah, so it was a pleasure to write.
How hard was it? Because I'm not from the US myself, and I know how hard it can be when you when you are not in the US and you're trying to speak to people who are in the US and the logistics and agents and stuff like that, and sometimes it's like if you're not in the US, you don't exist. So sometimes that's a big problem. But I mean, you as you managed to interview really lots of people. So how hard was it to achieve that?
Right, because I'm in Australia, is that right?
Yeah. I mean, it's impressive even if you had been in the US, but I can imagine that.
Right.
I mean,
I think people ask that about me all the time because most of my writing has involved people who were involved in the films. I'm a really big, passionate supporter of if you're writing about film, yes, it's great to have your criticism and your idiosyncratic point of view on the film and analysis, etc. But it's really, really vital to actually incorporate people who worked on the film itself into your piece. I think we need to really, really respect film. We need to see it as an actual art form because it is. It's an amazing craft and everyone involved is just as important as the next person involved. And that if you can find people who were involved in the film, not just major players, anyone, it's really important to sort of champion their work and give them a voice because it's essential. So as far as being in Australia and primarily, 99% of the writing I do is about American film or Canadian or European, but primarily American. It doesn't really matter at all in this day and age because I guess, we've got internet and things like that. And people ask would it be easy if you were in LA or whatever. I'm like, not really, because I feel like I'd be just everyone else. But I think when a lot of people sort of respond to the fact that I am from Melbourne, Australia, they kind of go, geez, okay, yeah, sure, talk to the guy from Australia. And you get remembered being that person from Australia, which is cool. But with Cujo, for example, it's interesting because everything was this full circle of connected tissue with every other film that I've written about. For instance, I did a book all about 70s movie musicals, which came out a couple of years ago, and I discussed Pete's Dragon in that from 1977. And one of the guys in that film was Gary Morgan, and I had no idea. I had no idea before I started my research that Gary Morgan was Cujo. He played Cujo. He was the guy in the dog suit in the St. Bernard costume, which is very cool. And I spoke to Barry Pearl from Greece, who knows Gary. And he said, look, I know Gary. He played Cujo. And I was like, okay, wow. So there you go. There's that connective tissue between Pete's Dragon and Cujo. So then things grew from there. I've known Dee for a long time, so she was on board from the get-go. But yeah, everyone's been great. The agents, you brought up the agents issue, that's only really played an issue with me a few times. I remember agents kind of saying yes to interviews and then saying no and doing that constant sort of dance that drives you crazy. Like, do you want me to name names of certain people who who had agents? I mean, it's up to you. But I mean, the whole thing is that you have to sort of, they have to say yes or no, and that's it. You can't keep at them. I mean, but I did. I was relentless with a lot of interviews. Jan de Bont, for instance, that was just a constant email back and forth, and nothing eventuated, which is interesting. And then when you read the book and you hear people talking about Jan de Bont, you're like, okay, I kind of get maybe why. Which is quite interesting. It's quite a fascinating story. There's a lot of real truth in this book, I feel.
Yeah.
There's a lot of years of sort of issues. But it's cool. It's a good fun read, I feel, from their perspective, the interviewees. So yeah, I think, to answer your question, it's not tricky at all, but it's just a matter, like, chasing someone like John Travolta when I was trying to work on a Carrie book, that was friggin' insane. Like, there's walls around him, it's insane. Someone like Tippi Hedren, her agent, was really, really tricky. It was like, yes, she can have a draft of what's going to print, that's fine, and then yes, she can edit it, yes, blah, 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 but that never eventuated, so that was really annoying in the end. Billy D. Williams, I mean, like, to not talk about Star Wars would have been an amazing thing for him, because I wanted to talk to him about Lady Sings the Blues for my musicals book, which is a phenomenal film and he's brilliant in it. But the agent was sort of, umming and ahhing, and that drove me crazy. And you run out of time, so you can't really wait for certain things. But yeah, I think I've never really had much of an issue, really. I think that 95% of the time I've gotten people I need, so which is cool.
That's great. Yeah, and I think that you can tell that from the interviews you have in this book that people are
they seem to enjoying talking about the movie, and even though there's some people seems to not be so fond of other people, they are still talking about it. And I guess there's passed so much time now, so it really doesn't matter if there been some bad blood between different people and stuff like that. So it feels like people are talking very freely in the book, and you get a really true image of what happened when they recorded the movie.
Absolutely, yeah. Cool, I'm glad.
And I must say that I'm also very happy that you talk to people that you talk to all kind of people. You talk to the stars, and you talk to everybody down to the guy holding the mic and stuff like that. Because I think that when I do interviews with people, when there's something new coming out, the stars are almost always saying the same thing in interview after interview. But if you can get to, say, the sound guy or the prop master or people that are a bit behind the scene, they often have a different view of things, and they tend to talk about different things. And those interviews are often more interesting than if you talk with the stars. And I think you captured a lot of that in the book.
Thank you. Yeah, you mentioned the sound, the boom mic operator. That was Patricia Muwirth. She worked on a couple of Stephen King adaptations. She did Pet Sematary as well, and she was very, very open about her feelings about people like Jan de Bont and just her feelings on the set. She was, I think, really kind of, from memory, hurt that Peter Medak was fired. And there's a lot of that in the book. I feel like a lot of people who were signed on with Peter originally, and they had friendships with him, and they really liked what he was doing and where he was going with the film. And then when he was let go, the energy shifted. And then Lewis, as brilliant as Lewis is, and what he did with the film, which is just phenomenal, he had his own people, and they were like all on had Lewis's back, and I think he does a fantastic job. It's a masterfully made film. What I was really proud of as well, which is quite, big noting myself here, but I am pretty proud of it, and I'm allowed to be, is the fact that Peter Medak, the night before I interviewed Peter Medak about the film, he actually watched Cujo, and he had never seen the film before.
Oh.
So it was like over 30 years of him having this real resentment and sadness, actual, overwhelming sadness of being fired for this project. And he watched the film and he was blown away. He loved what Lewis did. And Lewis and Peter are both incredible artists. They're both brilliant artists in their own right. And Peter really loved the film. He loved what Lewis did, but he loved the direction Lewis took. He really was impressed. He was incredibly impressed with Dee's performance, which is totally understandable as the tour de force. He loved Danny's performance. He loved everything about the film. And he told me to tell them. And I was like, well, I can hook you guys up because you should tell them yourself. It would be awesome. And so I did. I hooked them up. So I sort of settled this over 30-year-old resentment, this kind of unspoken resentment between these people. And they're now, everything's sort of in the air and everything's all cool, which I think is pretty cool because it's kind of writing film history a bit, in a sense. You're sort of documenting it, and now you're sort of, at the tail end of it, kind of contributing to it, which is cool. So I love the fact that Peter's seen the film, loves Lewis, loves what Lewis has done with it, loves Dee, and just watching their sort of chain emails, it was very cute. It was very sweet because they were kind of all now in the same boat and everything is all settled. The dust has settled and everything's all in its place, which I think is great because what Peter could have done with the film would have been amazing and very interesting. But what Lewis did, as we all know, is phenomenal. So
Yeah, it's interesting to read the book, and I actually watched the movie after I had read your book, and you watched the movie with a total different eyes when you have read the book. And I think I would recommend if people haven't seen the movie, they should first see the movie, then read your book, and then rewatch the movie, because then they can, just the first time they can see it without knowing anything about it, and then they read the book. And I discovered when I watched the movie after reading your book that you could take stuff that you had written about in the book, that in that scene there was the guy in the dog suit, and in that scene that happened, and you could get a much deeper feeling on how the movie was done. It's almost like you have these behind the scenes stuff on DVD, but you had it this time it was in the book. So and I think that was really entertaining to have that knowledge when you watch the movie again.
Right.
And I try to see whether you describe or if it's the people you interview, that they cut the movie so that they had used this guy in the dog suit, the real dog, and this dog head that they used. And they cut it so you shouldn't notice it. And I was giving it my best to see where they used which, and I couldn't do it, but it was fun because then I know what scenes to look for and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed watching the movie again after knowing what I know when I had read your book. So I think that's a good way to give the movie a better understanding.
Yeah. Well, the beauty of it is you can't tell, really, because that's the brilliance of the editing.
Yeah.
It's such a well-made film that you really can't tell. I mean, I can see one shot where the dog's head rams into the car door, and that you can tell is a puppet head. But, I mean, who cares? It's part of the magic.
Yeah.
You know, film is an escapist medium, but I think they do a remarkably good job with concealing the fact that Gary Morgan's in that suit and that there's an animatronic dog head. Yeah, I think it's one of those films that kind of is so well made that you don't realise, and that's cool. But eventually, you know, if you're a big fan of the film, it's cool to know all those little ins and outs. And just hearing the stories from such people like Bob and Kathy Clark, who, you know, made the dog suit and built the dog on the dolly that would tell into the car door, and the dog head and different various paws and stuff. That kind of stuff, that craft stuff, is awesome. I think it's great. And just their stories about trying to find actual fur that looks like a Saint Bernard, and doing the face of the Saint Bernard, and how difficult it is to construct a Saint Bernard, and they used sculpt of bear teeth for the teeth because they couldn't find a sculpt of Saint Bernard teeth, which is very cool, very interesting, because I learnt a lot about Saint Bernards during this research.
Yeah.
So that was quite interesting, and they're a rare dog. I mean, I was talking to a veterinarian here to find out about what they would have dealt with Saint Bernards if they ever had, and has been a vet for a long time and has never actually treated one. So, you know, in Australia we don't really have them. I guess the climate's not right for them, and they're a hard dog to keep because they're so big. But yeah, it was interesting to learn about Saint Bernards. And what I talk about in the early part of the book, if you recall, just the history, the folkloric and filmic and literary history of Saint Bernard, that's Manor in Peter Pan, the idea of the Saint Bernard as a saviour, and what Stephen King obviously does is twists that and makes him this Leviathan demonic monster, which is what Stephen King does beautifully. He turns things like the prom into Hell on Earth in Carrie, and he twists the relationship people have with their cars and makes it all sort of sick and demented and perverse and pristine. That kind of thing is what he does beautifully best. And, you know, he's such a good writer of character. He understands the human condition and character so well, and Cujo's a perfect example of that with Donna Trenton. But yeah, I think that kind of thing is fun to explore, the history of the Saint Bernards or whatever.
Yeah, and it's good, and it was fun to read that they actually did a dog suit for another dog that they put in there, and he should play a Saint Bernard. So that was interesting to hear. I had never heard anyone doing that before, so that was also very...
Black Labrador.
Yeah.
The reason they did that is because St. Bernards aren't able to do certain things. They're not as agile as a Labrador. A Labrador will be able to jump, and the Labrador was meant to jump through the glass window at the end of the film.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of fantastic shots of the dog in the St. Bernard suit, the Black Labrador. The problem was he was too happy and when he'd run, he'd prance, and it didn't look like a St. Bernard. So that was kind of cute. I like that fact. And I love the stories that Teresa and Miller shared, which was all about her dad, who's no longer with us, but he was the animal trainer on Cujo, and he talks about how much he loved the dogs, and they all lived with them, which is very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like knowing the facts behind the movies. Like, for example, that it was very cold when they filmed it, and they were supposed to be in this warm car, and how they did that, and the fact that how they did everything around the kid, and how they treated him, because I mean he was 6 years old and couldn't even read, so he had to learn the lines, and he learned the other people's lines, so he know where his lines were coming and stuff like that. And I mean that's stuff you never think about, and you would never know if you did read a book like this. So that's really, really interesting, I think. And I was thinking, Cujo is almost 35 years old. Was it hard to get people to remember? Because I mean, sometimes in the book they say they don't remember exactly how things happen, but for most part they have a good recollection of what actually happened. And
I was lucky. in that regard. You're right, you're totally right. A lot of people can't remember certain things. Jerry Madden, who plays the detective, Jerry Harden. Jerry Harden is the actor. He couldn't remember much. He only had a couple of scenes, basically sort of dealing with Dee Wallace's character. So her husband, Daniel Kelly's character, being worried about his wife, etc., and her whereabouts. He only had a couple of scenes, but he didn't remember much about at the shoot. But that was okay. So I felt like his contribution was enough. Whereas someone like, Terry Donovan Smith, who has a very tiny role as a mechanic, he remembered heaps. And he only had really one scene, and he shares a really funny story about his character being looped because he didn't have an appropriate New England accent, apparently.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that kind of thing, you're right. There's a lot of people who don't remember a lot of stuff. There's a lot of people who do. I think with Cujo, I was blessed that everyone did have very fond memories. Obviously, when you're dealing with Danny Pintaro, who's a kid at the time, he might not remember certain things, because as a kid, you yourself, you remember certain things as a child, but not in great detail if you were an adult at the time,
Yeah.
So with Danny, he'd remember things like Daniel Hugh Kelly buying him a rocket ship on set, or the rocking horse in his bedroom, and that sort of stuff. Kind of major visual things, I guess.
Yeah.
And he actually asked me how he got the role, which is funny because Marsha Ross, the casting director, told me. And hearing that, in response to that, was like, oh, okay, wow, I never heard that. So that's it's a cool kind of thing where people kind of have collected memories and they can share them and get to cross-reference them, and it's awesome. And I like the fact that everyone remembers a different number of dogs. No one has a consistent number. There's no consistent number.
Yeah.
Lewis says there's 8. Dee says there's 10. They all have different numbers. But I think for me personally, if someone was to ask me how many dogs are actually, I'd probably go with Teresa Ann Miller's answer because she lived with them.
Yeah.
So I guess she'd probably have the best memory of that.
Yeah. I guess everyone you talk to that's in the book will buy the book and read what everyone else said and go, oh, that's what's happening.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you also managed to get a lot of photos. Were those from the studio, or was it personal photos from the people you interviewed?
Yeah, some were and some weren't. So a lot of them came from various sources. Danny sent a bunch. Gary Morgan sent a bunch. We sourced a whole bunch of stuff, private collectors, things like that. So yeah, it was all that kind of deal. The on-set photographer, Gail, she sent a whole bunch, and that was lovely of her. So yeah, there's been a number of contributors, so that was cool. Even Charles Bernstein, the composer, sent the fantastic sheet music for Cujo's theme, which is just beautiful to have in there. And so there's all this really cool stuff in the book that people will really enjoy. So it's funny, as I'm talking to you, it's actually going into layout right now. So.
Yeah, and it's amazing to have so much from such an old movie, because I get the feeling that, I mean, today you get, in a DVD release, you get almost as much extra material as you get the movie itself, but that wasn't the case back in the days when you at best had a VHS release of the movie. So it's amazing that there's so much stuff left from the movie and that people actually saved and developed these pictures and stuff like that. So it's a treasure to have that collected.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So, are you planning on going on to a new Stephen King movie once this book is finished now?
Well, yeah, actually I am. So once this is done anyway, but I'm going to slowly dive into the next one, but I've got my first major interview coming up in a couple of weeks, and that's with John Carpenter. So I'll be doing a book on the making of Christine.
Oh.
Yeah, so I've got Keith Gordon on board, Alexandra Paul, and Bill Phillips, a bunch of other people. So that's, going into, I'm going to take that very slowly and go into that as Cujo comes out, hopefully in the July mark, and The Howling on those sort of time frame, I guess. So that's also happening soon as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting sort of falling into this sort of time frame of doing books and having them done and then diving into new ones. But I'm gonna ease myself into Christine. I'm not sure how I'm planning it or how I'm gonna map it out, because Cujo is a scene by scene breakdown and analysis with all the info on the production integrated.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I'm going to take on Christine. It might be a bit different. Might be maybe more chapter based. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah, and I guess it's makes your work easier when you have a book like this Cujo book to show people and see this is what I've done, and you can really show what's going to come out of this, all these interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad. Yeah, you had fun reading it, and cool.
Yeah. Okay. So is there any last word about the book that you want to tell our listeners?
Just tell your fans to pre-order it. That'd be great.
Yeah, I will definitely do that, and I'm sure every King fan will enjoy it because it's, as I said, it's a very in-depth look at how the Cujo movie came about. And one last question though, also, how would you, in the story Tad dies, do you think they did the right decision to do that, to change that in the movie and have him survive?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think as far as the novel goes, it works beautifully. It's I mean, King himself has said that he didn't want that to happen. Event like retrospect, he would have changed the ending, and that's cool as well. But I think Tad dying in the novel worked. Also, Tad surviving in the novel would work. In the film, absolutely not. I think he definitely needs to survive, because what would happen is you'd tail off and you'd have to sort of deal with Donna and Vic's grief and kind of somber sort of ending that would linger. Having him survive and then the three of them reuniting on the porch, which is quite poignant. This middle class family reuniting on a farmyard from the working class on the porch, sort of, the three of them sort of reforming, regrouping, carrying their child. I think that's much stronger an ending, and just to have him survive kind of, I guess it sort of validates Donna's plight, which is basically to save her child and to save herself, and redeems her character with whatever flaws she has, whatever sort of sadness and whatever selfishness, whatever else she has going on. But I think, having Tad survive the film is a very smart decision, because it just closes the film much more stronger. I think if he was to die, like I said, it would sort of sit in limbo. Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, it would have needed something more than just him dying, and then at the end it would have to be more stuff like in the book or the story where we hear about how they grieve him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah. And her getting her rabies shot.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you so very much for taking the time to speak to me about the book, and good luck with it, and I hope you sell out the entire book and everybody will read it.
No problem. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Okay, and that was the interview, and I hope you all enjoyed that. And for our next podcast, we have a really special guest. She's worked on the Dark Tower series in the form of being the, I guess you could say, the collector of all things Midworld related. And that is, of course, Robin Firth, who wrote the Dark Tower Concordance that was used as a reference during the writing of the series. And she was a fantastic guest, and we talked for over an hour. So you'll want to be sure to download that episode when it comes out, and she's got a lot of great insights. But that's for our next podcast.
Yes, and until then, thank you so much for listening, and
stay safe,
but
stay scared.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The end. Cool.